Welcome to the Hybrid Real Estate Professional Podcast, where we dive deep into the intersection of career, family, and finances. Learn the mindsets, tips, and strategies to help you on your personal journey to build a life of abundance and purpose for you and your family. Now here's your host, Aaron Amin. Welcome back to another episode of the Hybrid Real Estate Professional Podcast. Today, I'm joined by my friend and mentor, Justin Foster. After spending years working in the oil and gas industry pursuing real estate on the side, Justin decided to take the leap into being a full-time real estate investor at the age of 33. He is a dedicated husband and father of 3 young children who he places at the center of his life. Justin also ran a large-scale wholesaling operation in Tulsa, Oklahoma for several years, doing over 100 deals a year at the peak. Today, he has scaled back his operation and turned his focus to mentoring and giving back to the next generation of real estate investors. I've learned a tremendous amount from Justin in the short time we've known each other. I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. Let's get into it. All right, welcome to the Hybrid Real Estate Professional Podcast. Today, I am joined by a friend and fellow mentor of mine, Justin Foster. Justin and I met through Coach Chad Carson's community, Rental Property Mastery. He and I have built a friendship over the last several months, and he has an amazing story to tell. So I'm excited to have you here, Justin, and would love for you to just introduce yourself to my audience here in your own words.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. So glad to be on. Thank you for having me. Really excited. My story is I'm just an average guy, originally from South Texas. I live in Oklahoma, but I have a wife and 3 beautiful young kids. I had an early career in the oil and gas industry after college for about 10 years. Started doing real estate as a side hustle in 2017, late 2017. And I did that on the side for a while. And then 2020, right before COVID hit, I decided it was a good idea for me to transition into real estate full time. And I've been a full-time real estate investor since 2020 to now, mainly buy and hold Landlord. That's our main bread and butter. We also do some hard money lending now and to do some smaller, fewer, bigger deals is what we've transitioned to. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. I really enjoy being able to connect with other folks too who are building in the process of building a portfolio. And so for the last 5 years, 6 years, that's been our story. We've been in a building mode, and now we're starting to transition towards what we like to call the ender or harvester stage, a little bit more of that flavor.
That's awesome. So I would love to go chronologically. So first of all, you encapsulated there's so much to unpack in there that we're going to get into, but you've done a lot in a relatively short amount of time. But let's rewind back to the W-2 days. So you said you worked in the oil and gas industry. What was the kind of job you had, and what were some of the things that also led you to start pursuing real estate on the side while you were doing that?
Yeah, I really enjoyed my job right out of college. I worked in a technical role, which I'm not a very technically minded person actually, but I just fell into that. I'm just the person that gets curious about different things. So it was more on the geosciences side of things, working in rigs in Colorado, and really that became all over North America. So I traveled a lot. But before I had a family, that was fine. And then once I started to settle down, I got into remote work. And so I was in Denver, Colorado, started working remotely and being able to work from home, which was nice. But it was also long hours. It was an operations job. And so I had a series of roles within operations, and then moved into training. And then I moved into eventually sales after I transitioned to Oklahoma. So I live in Oklahoma now, and that's where we've sunk down our roots. And it was in my transition from Colorado to Oklahoma where we just accidentally rented out half a duplex that we own, my wife and I. We did that from a distance. So moved out to Tulsa, and it was interesting to be able to collect rent. And I didn't really put the practicality of investing. Like, I knew theoretically what investing was, and I had read some of the main books about investing, and my parents had a couple of rental properties, but I didn't put a lot of emphasis into that being a big thing. I knew it would be important for me to do one day. And as I fell into it and somebody was paying me a rent check, every month, that was nice. But I also had all of this equity tied up in this property, and I started looking at properties that were more affordable in Oklahoma. Oklahoma's a pretty cheap state. And then I got into the whole rabbit trail of what investing really is and how numbers and cash flow could really work. And what if I were to take this equity in this half a duplex that we own and buy a property? So I started doing a lot of just research and reading and education for about 6 months on gearing up to buy my first property. And that's really where my investing career started, was deciding to sell this property in Colorado in 2017 and intentionally buy a property here in our backyard in Oklahoma where we've sunk down roots.
Very cool. I was smirking during that because there's so many parallels where you hear a lot of people that it's almost an accident, right? Like they end up in a situation where they're renting, or the accidental landlord is its own kind of archetype. And there's usually a fork in the road there. Some people love it and they get that feeling of, oh, cool, I can generate some income from my properties. Maybe there's something there. And other people hate it and figure out a way to get out of that situation as soon as possible. But it sounds like that in your head got the wheels spinning, and you were trying to figure out how to take that and turn it into something that can serve you and your family. You were, I think, a bit younger at the time. How can you take that and use it to supplement your job, right? And yeah, like moving from a more expensive market, I don't know what Denver was like at the time, but I know that's one of those markets that has been ballooning over the last decade or so to where you live now in Tulsa. I'm sure it felt quite powerful how far your dollar could stretch from one market to the next.
That was a 700 square foot duplex. That was half a duplex, right? So it was just one bedroom, one bath. We sold that property, and I think we had about $100,000 to invest total. So that's a good chunk of money for us. But we bought a triplex. We bought 3 doors with that, and bought it all cash. And then I had somebody loan me out some rehab money to renovate this triplex. That was the first deal that we did here. And on the accident was sort of what any typical average landlord might be in the United States. Like most landlords in the United States own less than 4 units. A lot of times it's just a house that they used to own that they decided to rent out, or a property that they inherited or something like that. So that's like over 90% of the rental properties owned in the United States are owned by those folks. But one of the things that I did that was different from that being an accident into this being an actual thing that we could eventually live off of was, early on, I decided that I don't want to just do this. I wanted to do it on the side, but I didn't want to treat it like it's a hobby. I wanted to treat it like it's a business. And very quickly from the very start, I started thinking about it like a small business. And because of that, that helped me have a framework and helped give me the tools that I needed to be able to go and buy more properties, but also make it a sustainable thing for us so that we don't get to be tired landlords. I buy lots of properties from tired landlords now, and it's because the accident stays an accident and it doesn't become a business. And I don't think people grow quality portfolios on accident.
Absolutely. And not only accidental landlords can make it quite a long ways, many years, without treating it like a business, but eventually they're going to get burned out, or they're going to get taken advantage of, or they're going to maybe make a misstep because they didn't treat it like a business. But I totally agree that having that entrepreneurial mindset, putting in some basic theory or methodology behind why you're doing it and how you're running your business is what's going to set you up to be able to scale into the future. So speaking of scale, right? Like most people buy a handful of rentals at the beginning. Maybe they learn the mechanics. I can say from my own experience, we bought a handful between 2019 and 2022. You took scale to a new level, right? You built out a whole toolkit of skills, and you went into what's known as wholesaling. So I would love for you to even just zoom all the way out and explain conceptually what is wholesaling and how you decided to make that part of your growth and scale plan, especially as you transitioned out of the traditional W-2.
Yeah. So that first deal was in 2018 or 2017. And over 2 years, I had been buying from what's called wholesalers mainly, and some on market, but it was hard to make the numbers work on market. as much as it was to, buy something from somebody who was buying off market. And so what a wholesaler does is they go and they find a property, somebody who needs to sell, and they get a contract with them. And then they sell that deal to another investor. And so as a person who had a job and I was working full time, I was flexible on my job. So I could go and buy these deals and rehab and rent these deals out, these properties out. But I didn't really have a whole lot of time to be able to find the deal myself. So it was a great thing for me to sync up with other people who that's what they were specialized in doing, going to find deals, solving people's unique problems. And then I would be the end buyer. So the way that works is that contract would either be assigned to me at closing, and then the person who found the deal would get a fee, and I would end up with the property, and I'm ultimately holding it. So I was familiar with wholesalers. A good friend of mine was the one who wholesaled me quite a few properties over that time. And as I started to build a portfolio, we built up to over 12 doors. It became a stream of cash flow for us. And I started wondering about what other skills could I be focused on to build more towards my financial freedom number. And I became very almost obsessed about the idea that I could eventually replace my income with passive income from a real estate portfolio. And in order to do that, I ran out of money. So I had to figure out what other things can I be doing to get from point A to point B. Point B was being that kind of passive income goal to replace my job. And I decided through a lot of conversation with other people that helped me understand this is that finding the deal is actually one of the main skills that I could have done to be able to build a portfolio quicker. And I was interested in building a portfolio quicker. I know some people, they want to do this over 10, 15, 20 years. I really admire those folks, but I've been doing this for a couple of years and I really wanted to get there, and I wanted to get there safely, but also in a short amount of time. And finding more discounted properties was the thing that allowed me to do that. So I got interested in the skill of just finding the deal, mainly to build my portfolio. And wholesaling is just one of those exit options that I had in the process of finding that deal. There's a lot of deals that I didn't want to keep, but Aaron, if you wanted that deal, I'd be happy to sell you that deal, and that would help to pay for some of the marketing that I was doing to find the ones that I wanted to keep. And so I could sacrifice some and I could keep some. And that's what the thing became for me ultimately.
Yeah, it's such an incredible strategy. And what a lot of people don't normally think about when they hear people leaving their jobs to focus on real estate is that there's two different types of income when it comes to real estate. One is the passive income, which is what people tend to fixate on, which is the rental money coming in first of the month, mailbox money, so to speak, with relatively small amount of management and oversight. That's what people want. That's what people desire. But it is hard. Like you said, you run out of money at some point. You run out of deals. It's hard to stack that without a lot of things going in your favor. So what you did though, is instead of just fixating on how can I slowly build $100, $200 a month of passive cash flow until it covers my living expenses, you said, I'm going to go learn how to find deals and use it to generate some active income. And I can either, if it's a deal that fits what I want to hold long term, I can keep it, or I can sell it to an investor who that might fit their parameters and make some additional money. And by doing so, and by building a powerful engine to find deals and then figure out what to ultimately do with them, you were able to replace the income that you needed from your job and continue to grow your portfolio. It's a pretty brilliant strategy. But I'm sure there was a very steep learning curve. And ultimately, when you have a wholesaling operation, not only do you have to be very operations minded, which it sounds like you had some of those skills from your W-2 days, but you also have to learn marketing and sales. So can you talk about how some of those skills, did that come naturally to you? What did you have to develop in order to succeed in that role?
Yeah. So that's a good breakdown here. And marketing and sales is all wholesaling is. And what do we mean? What do we mean by marketing and what do we mean by sales is like the next question. I hadn't done any marketing. I was in a corporate job in a Fortune 500 company. I had sales experience, so I knew how to have conversations with people. But in terms of running a business and understanding how do I broadcast a message out there that's going to attract people that would want to reach out to me so that I could help them, that didn't know how to do that. So I partnered with somebody who did. That's the first thing that I did. But then we also reached out to somebody who was successful at marketing. And we said, how do you do it? And they showed us exactly how they did it. And we copied exactly how they did it without asking a whole lot of questions other than the how. And I think what people will believe is that they start something, and being an entrepreneur is like, oh, you have to be so creative and you have to have a really great website and you have to have a really great logo and you need a card, business cards. And they spend all this time on thinking that they're marketing and they're not doing anything is what's really going on. They're just distracted by these things. There's certain things that move the needle on your marketing. And if you don't want to recreate that, you want to copy that from other people who are successful. And this is something that I've done throughout my entire career, which is if I want to learn something that I don't know about, and I have a business background from college, but I don't know, wasn't really taught anything about business when I'm in college. I think you could probably resonate with that. Is find somebody who's accomplished what you want to accomplish, right? Whatever that is. I don't really care what it is. And as long as they've gotten the results that you want to get, they have authority to speak into what you can do or should do, and then listen to that person. And so that is the best way to shortcut this whole thing so that you can figure anything out. So marketing definitely falls into that category, right? And all marketing is broadcasting out, messaging consistently about what it is that you do to help people so that you can attract leads that'll reach out to you. And then that then initiates a sales process so that you can then go and serve that person. So, that's probably the most fundamental way to understand what it is. But I didn't really know what marketing was or how to do it until I reached out to people and I asked them, like, how do you do this?
100%. Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly about seeking mentorship, and especially so many people out there make their systems available, not usually for free, right? You usually have to pay for some sort of access or coaching or mentorship, but it's well worth the investment if you can learn from people who are doing exactly what it is that you're trying to do. And people are typically more generous than I think we give credit for. There's a lot of people such as yourself, such as Coach Chad Carson, who's how we met, who are very generous. Yes, they have tech programs you can pay for and coaching you can pay for, but there's just so much information you can glean from folks who have already done it. But nonetheless, it does take some courage to pull the trigger on something. When we talked about marketing, like most of it costs money. Mm-hmm. I know at one point, correct me on this figure if I'm wrong, hope you don't mind me sharing, but you had shared with me that you spent upwards of, I think it was $40,000 a month in marketing. Is that right?
Yeah. And that's a lot of money. We were making a certain multiple of revenue over that. And we didn't start with that, right? We started with $1,000 a month because we were following and copying what other people had done. And we had some mentorship on how to do this. We developed a marketing machine that could produce a certain return on investment of the marketing dollars that we spent. And so with marketing, you start at a place, you want to start as big as you can, frankly. And I'm all about this small and mighty investor, but there's a certain amount of just movement that you have to have forward in order to get a result. And there's an activation point of marketing. So if you spend $10 a month in marketing, Karen, then you may never reach that activation point. So that's something to know, right? So maybe $500 a month or maybe $1,000 a month, whatever it is. And it could be your time too. So if you're going to go out and you're looking for deals, for instance, you're driving for dollars, maybe you're not going to spend as much money, but you're going to spend 15 hours a week or something like that going out driving for dollars. That also applies into how big you're going to go right out the gate. But from there, if I'm tracking my numbers, I'm being consistent, and I know that based on the numbers, I can reverse engineer the data that I'm tracking, then I could say, okay, Aaron, when we spend $1,000, we make $5. So if we spend $2,000, we should make 10. And then based on the data that I'm tracking and the things that I'm doing, I spend $2,000, now I make 10,000. So if I spend $4,000, I make 20. If I spend $40,000, there's a certain point of diminishing returns. We're making 120,000. And that's how it works. And you're working your way up to that, and you're earning your way into the place where it becomes an actual marketing machine is a good way of thinking about it. And the mechanics of how that's done are tried and true. The book, $100 million Leads, that book, and then all the other marketing books basically follow that logic fundamentally. Like, you don't have to read them all to just know that. It's a good idea to copy it. It's a good idea to be consistent with it. It's a good idea to go big with it. It's a good idea to track your numbers so that you can reverse engineer your numbers.
It almost seems non-negotiable that you need to track your numbers, right? Because if you're just feeding money into a machine, into a process, but you have no idea the effectiveness, then how can you judge whether those dollars are being well spent and giving you the result you want, right? You gave me a peek behind the hood of your system, and it was crystal clear, to your point, that if I feed $1 into this channel, I have X years of data showing that it will yield this number of dollars back in return. And then you stop thinking of it as I'm spending money on marketing, and you think of it as I'm making this investment, which has years of data to back up that it will achieve this return. It feels less risky and more like a proven system, right? But you would never know that if you didn't track your numbers. At least that's what I learned from looking at your system.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, and the numbers don't lie. It's a numbers game.
Yeah. So we get all these leads, we build the machine, the leads are coming in, the phone starts to ring. This is where I get anxious. What do you say to these people? These people are calling you, you've built these lists. Most of these are off market, if not all of them. So that means that this person did not actively go out and intend to sell their house and list it with an agent. So your phone rings. First of all, is that a skill that you felt comfortable with going into it, or one that you had to develop? And second, like, what would somebody need to do to prepare themselves to have these conversations?
Yeah, those are good questions. Was that a skill that I was prepared for? I didn't think so. I hope I made it too complicated at the beginning. The first thing to know is what it is that you're offering, okay? And who you're looking to help. So when you're deal finding, you're looking for the right kind of person that you can actually help. When you send out this message, what you're offering is basically a convenient transaction in exchange for equity in the property. And so there's people out there who are in situations, or they have certain properties that they're happy to exchange a certain amount of equity in their property for a convenient transaction with somebody like you. Number one, you got to believe that. You got to know that before you talk to anybody, right? That this is the deal that you're looking for, and this is the deal that you're offering. And so the give is convenience. The receiving is equity. So you have to have a conversation that's going to know or ask questions. If this is a person who's in a situation who's willing to give up some equity for convenience, that would be the first thing. And then also be able to have a conversation about how are those numbers going to work for you, and are you in a position to offer that convenience? So before you ever do this, you either want one of two things. You either want money, or you want buyers who have money. So it's a good idea, if you're going to go after off-market properties, to be in a position that you can actually help people, and that's how you do it. It's not a good idea. There's some people who talk about wholesaling and say, hey, go out there and just find the deal and the money will find you. Is there some truth to that? Yes, to an extent, but you can hurt people that way, and you want to help people. So if you want to help people, the way that you do it is you want to find people who will buy these deals from you, or you want to be yourself able to buy the deal, right? So that being the setup, how do you have the conversation? I like to have the conversation just by asking questions. And there's 4 things that I want in a conversation with the seller. The first thing is, tell me about the property condition. So why do I want to know about the property condition? Because as an investor, typically I'm looking for something that needs a little love, and somebody who has a property that needs a little love that they can't just list on the market and sell for top dollar because the roof needs to be replaced or the kitchen's dated, is going to be willing to typically offer a little bit of a discount. So that's great. So that's a good leading question to open up the conversation. Tell me about the property. The second thing that I really try to focus on is, why are you looking to sell? Like, I just want to know what the situation is. So tell me about Tell me more about what's causing you to want to sell your property right now. And I spend most of the time in the conversation there, right? That actually, I think people get on these conversations a little bit too hung up on other aspects, and they don't listen with their ears about what's going on in the seller's world. And you want to know everything that you can know, because the more you know, the more you can help. And the better you can help, the happier everybody's going to be, right? The better you can negotiate and create a win situation. And that's why we spend a lot of time on the situation and what their why is. They're moving across the country. They had a tenant trash this property out and they're just frustrated and they don't want to be a landlord anymore because they fell into it on an accident. And they just want to get an RV and travel with their new spouse. So what's their why? And it's a lot of people can't imagine why anybody would want to trade equity in their house for a convenient transaction. And that's a major hiccup. So you have to get over that. There's a lot of people who won't, okay? Most people won't, right? Most people want top dollar for their house, okay? Really, most people don't even want to sell their house. So you got to start there. The second thing is people who do want to sell their house, most people want top dollar for their house, right? And then there's some people that they want to sell their house, but they don't want top dollar. That's what you're trying to figure out, right? So I spend a lot of time on that. The third thing that I try to figure out is the timeline. So if they want to sell in 6 months, they're typically not as much of a motivated situation as if they need to sell in the next 30 days. So that's important to know. And then the last thing that I try to figure out is what's a price that you want. And from there, if I have those 4 things, I can usually see if this is somebody that I can help or not. So that's the easiest way to have those conversations. And the best way to approach them is notice how the way you uncover those 4 things is just by asking questions. I have a script of how to ask questions, but it's not like you're convincing somebody on how they should trade equity in their house for your convenient transaction. That never happens. That won't happen. You have to just ask questions to understand what their why is and see if you can come up with a good solution.
To me, that sounds like a very nuanced skill that does not come naturally to everyone, and it has to be developed through repetition and also an actual desire to learn the answers. If all you're staring at on the other end of the phone call is a dollar sign, and you don't care about any of those more personal level details about what is motivating this person, are they motivated? I don't know. To me, that does not come naturally, and it's something that you have to learn and practice. And so what I wanted, like the last 12, 15 minutes, we've been talking about wholesaling. There's this common theory or idea I've seen in a lot of different real estate groups that like, oh, if you don't have enough money and you're just trying to get into real estate, like just start with wholesaling. I personally don't agree that is a very easy entry path, because there's so many skills, not only the marketing and the sales, but there's so much knowledge that you have to have in order to succeed in wholesaling. And I think that having some baseline experience in any of those skill sets or in real estate in general is what's going to make you succeed. I don't know. Would you agree, or do you have an opinion
100%.
on that?
I bought deals from wholesalers for a couple of years before I even ventured into it. And even when I did, I made sure I partnered one of these guys to see how exactly do I have these conversations. Now, wholesaling, it's easier. The reason it's difficult is because people are difficult. It's not fundamentally that complicated, right? I think we overcomplicate a lot of these things, but I can tell you it's a lot of work. And there's a number of reasons why I wouldn't wholesale. And I don't wholesale a whole lot anymore. We were doing almost 100 deals a year for a couple of years, and I built a portfolio where I wanted it, and I stopped for the most part. And it's still a tool in my tool belt. I do some here and there, but it's nowhere near what it was. But one of the things about wholesaling is that you can't really control the supply. This is something that no guru out there on wholesaling is going to tell you. But okay, so if I have this pen, Aaron, and all wholesaling is, if I buy this pen in China for 5 cents and I sell it here for $1.05, that's wholesaling. And the thing about real estate is that it's just like the pen, right? But the difference is there's more magnitude in the size of whatever the unit is. Does that make sense? But I can always order an extra shipment from China to buy this pen. Does that make sense? but I don't have the ability to necessarily go out into the marketplace and generate more motivated sellers, more distressed properties. So I can't control the supply of what I'm sourcing, right? Like I can the pen. So I think it's actually smarter to buy the deals from wholesalers and let them do the hunting, because it is hard. That's what makes it hard. There's a lot of competition right now, at least for the last few years. There's plenty of competition for just a few deals out there that are actually people who want to trade equity in their house for this convenient transaction. And you may, at least at the start, had a lot more success in learning about the off-market opportunities, having somebody else go out there and source the deals for you, at least at first. I think at some point, you may get to the point where you can go direct to the seller and do that in a small and mighty way and have some competitive advantages as being the actual buyer that shows up to buy these properties, and you're not going to go and wholesale them. But to start, having other people source the deal and leveraging the talents of other people to be able to do that, it doesn't cost you anything but time. The thing that I would encourage your listeners to do, and where I think people get hung up on this, is they don't make enough offers. So you have wholesalers in your market who are going out there finding deals. And if you want to differentiate yourself as a buyer and you want to get more deals, the fundamental thing that you're going to do is make an offer on a property that you want to buy. What people make the mistake of is they see a price and they think that the price is the price. That's not the case. Just make an offer for a number that's going to work for you. And if you do that, what'll end up happening is maybe you don't get a yes on that deal, but maybe they accept a higher price from somebody else and that buyer backs out. You're one of the few that made an offer. So you're going to get a call, right? And that number is going to work for you. And so you want to, no matter what you're doing, whether you're looking for deals directly from sellers or you're buying deals on the market or from wholesalers, as a real estate investor, you want to be asking yourself this question: how do I become the type of person who is, if I'm building, who is consistently making offers? And that is also a numbers game. And so you can just focus on that. You don't have to focus on the very top of the funnel of necessarily generating the off-market leads and all that kind of stuff. And you can just go straight to, okay, for the people who are sourcing these deals, focus on making those people offers and then build from there.
That is a wonderful takeaway. Make more offers, and obviously the volume and the numbers will work in your favor. Eventually you'll start some conversations, as long as you're making those offers based on sound judgment analysis that fit what you can afford or what you're looking for, either yourself or potentially other buyers. There's no reason it shouldn't work out over a long period of time.
And you asked a good question. I just figured one more thing about that, about was it comfortable? Where the conversation with real estate becomes not comfortable is a lot of times once you get down to offers, like making an offer, the reality is 9 times out of 10, you're going to have to make an offer that's lower than what somebody else is asking. And people are doubting themselves on if that's a legit offer or not. What's going to happen? Is this person going to be upset? Are they going to yell at me? They're worried about being disappointed at being told no. They're worried about disappointing the other side. And so those things are things that you want to lean into, like that discomfort of making a lower offer of a number that's going to work for you is something that you want to lean towards and get used to the uncomfortability of it. And wholesalers are a good place to start because they're out there making offers that are offending people every single day, right? And that don't make sense for a lot of people. And then there's a few that do, and they're helping those people. And if you're playing the exact same game with them, they understand, right? They're not going to be generally offended. If they are, they're probably not your person that's going to be able to source deals for you consistently or that you want to work with. And you just want to be able to make offers consistently with people who understand. But getting comfortable with the uncomfortability of making an offer that's going to be low enough to make sense for you is 100% what you want to lean into.
Yeah, that is a valuable skill, whether you're spending $40,000 a month to source your leads or whether you're just sniffing around what's on the MLS, right? It is a different feeling when you have to lowball somebody on the other end of a phone call or the other side of a table directly versus have your agent write it into a purchase agreement and send it to that person's agent. There's a different level of uncomfortability when you're doing it face to face, but totally agree.
I'll say one thing about that, Aaron. So here's a good tip. So somebody who's thinking, okay, yeah, I need to make offers, but I really don't feel comfortable with this wholesaler is asking for 185 and I need to be at 145. The way to approach that is to use the words, what if? So that's a really good way to ease into this, is like making an offer without an offer. And you can call the wholesaler up and just say something like, hey, just wondered, what if my offer was $140,000? Or what if you had an offer for $140,000? Does that get this deal done? You're going to hear the answer no, but you're not putting yourself in a corner necessarily saying one price, and then that's the end of the conversation. It's just a what if game. So if you need to say a really low number, there's ways that you can do that they don't end the conversation right away, and it keeps the conversation alive and keeps it lighthearted. Playing what if or asking what if is a really good way to do that.
Yeah, that's a great call out. See, I could geek out with Justin all day about all these tactical nuances because I think these skills are so important. And these are all areas I'm trying to get better at myself all the time. So in the interest of time, though, I want to talk about kind of the other side of the mountain. So you built this amazing machine. You had a team, you had really tight operations. You yourself were growing not only your portfolio, but your skills, also your leadership capabilities, right? You had built a team that you were the leader of. But then you also decided to scale that back and pull back from the 100+ deals a year and turn it into something that was a little more congruent with the lifestyle that you wanted. Can you talk about that decision? And also, what did you do to get to where you are now?
From the beginning, I treated it like a business, and I would encourage anybody who has one door or 5 doors, whatever it is, you have 50 doors, it doesn't matter. It's important to know your why, and for that why to be bigger than you. And so I think a lot of times as somebody who's building a portfolio on the side is they don't always treat it like a business, and they have this felt sense of purpose and meaning and why, because there's an element of this is for my family, this is for freedom, this is for time with my children, this is to be able to do whatever matters to me on the other side of financial independence. But there's also something that I think a lot of people resonate with, providing clean, affordable housing for other people. It's a fundamental need that people have, and they're not really articulating it that a lot of times. And one of the things that you can do is figure out what it is that you're doing to serve other people exactly, and find some sort of language that, and I'm going to answer your question in a little bit, but I want to go way back to that first triplex, because when I went from accident to actual business, this is where the core of this came from. I started asking myself why I'm doing this in a much deeper way. And for me, my why was I wanted to cultivate a sense of home and belonging for myself and other people. That's my mission. And out of that came certain values that I thought were important to me, right? Language that matters to me. Stewardship is one of those. I want to be a good steward. I want to be a good steward of my tenants. I want to be a good steward of the money that I've been entrusted to. And that's why I want to invest, and I want to be better at that. I want to be a good steward of the leads. And so that plays into the how of how we did our marketing and stuff like that. I also was a person who wanted to initiate an attitude of progress, not perfection. Perfection was the enemy of our progress. It was all about being able to take kind of massive imperfect action. People hear that, but we adopt that mentality in our little small company. And that was a core value of us. And then there's other 2 really important values that we have, which is we want to do the right thing. And wholesaling is a really good area of where it's important to have this. I can feel great at times. It can feel messy at times. And you have to trust yourself to do the right thing, to make the right call. If this deal isn't going to make sense for this person, we're going to let them out of the contract because that's the right thing to do. We would never just hold somebody's feet to the fire if they didn't want to do business with us, for instance. That happened a few times, and for reasons that are outside of our control. And then another thing that was important to us was to know ourselves, right? That's a value of ours. And that's the fundamental view of leadership that I have is that self-knowledge is something that you pursue in order to be the best version of yourself in something. And I'm mentioning all these things because as I started to articulate these things and I'm leasing out these units that I'm starting to purchase while I'm working my W-2 job, I would tell my tenants, hey, I'm all about cultivating this space of being your home. I want you to belong here. It's not just the mechanics of some sort of transaction. I want them to feel my heart speaking to their heart and what is it that they're buying. And like a home for me, it's a sacred space. And once I started to have language to be able to articulate that on my own, then attracting better tenants was easier, right? Customers buy your why more than they do how you do things or what it is that you're giving, right? And so I started to learn that I could also have other people work for our business and do things with us to be able to accomplish this mission. And that was done in a really small and mighty way. But it became a thing that started from like a core purpose and a core sense of mission and a core sense of values. And from there, it built out into how we did things or what we offered to people. I don't know if that makes sense, but from the beginning, our business spent a lot of time trying to figure out what's meaningful about this business and how is it being transformative to my community. And not just what is it giving to me, but what am I offering to other people? And how can I focus on doing that better? And people want to be part of something that's meaningful. And they can tell when you're communicating from a place of why, as opposed to how you do something or what you do. So for us, those deeper questions are always at this, we try to keep them at the center. It's easy to get distracted around the circumference of business and everything else. But the why of wholesaling was to be able to cultivate more spaces of home and belonging for other people in our small and mighty rental portfolio. And then we also had a why of, we really wanted to help people have more and better options. And people who are stuck with these houses are really stuck. And so we helped them get unstuck. But from there, now we're focused on doing some lending. So we lend out money to other people who are going out and finding the deals and rehabbing the deals. And that's a much better form of leverage for us in this season to still accomplish the why. We're still cultivating homes. The community is still being transformed, but it's done more in partnership with other people, which I absolutely love. And so we have a little bit more leverage to be able to accomplish that. But it's been the same core why. And then over time, how we do that why and then what we're doing has evolved around it. So where we're at now, as we've transitioned to just a small portfolio and doing this lending model, is what I call a micro-family office, something that you and I talked about. But family office is this big term that rich families use that understand, I think, something that's really core. So a lot of times these families will have an exit in a business and they might have $50 million or $100 million. These are the Bill Gates of the world. They have family offices. And they set up an entire team of people to be able to protect their wealth, to be able to grow their wealth, and to have charitable contributions and stuff like that, whatever their philanthropy is. And for us, I'm robbing that term, but one of the things that I learned was that I can't do it on my own, that if I want to be a good steward, I actually need other people to help me. And so my COO, Olivia, has certain skills that I don't have. And like, I'm not Elon Musk. I'm just some dumb farmer here in Oklahoma. And there's certain gifts that I have and I can leverage those gifts, but there's really blind spots that I have too. And I need to cover my blind spots. If I could team up and partner with somebody else and create a small team, then we can be even better stewards of the things that we're given, right? We can accomplish more. And I think a lot of the solopreneur mentality reaches some sort of ceiling, and and I don't think it has to. So you can think about this. Like, I hear a lot of people say that they don't want to hire an attorney or they tell attorney jokes. Like, my rich friends never tell attorney jokes, right? They say, what attorney are you using? I need an attorney for this. I'm setting up this structure. Do you have a good attorney for this? That's what people with money, that's how they talk about attorneys. And you want to think like that. And the more that you think like that and you think, okay, I need an attorney on my team, That's a good idea. That's a really good idea. You need a CPA on your team. You need a really good agent on your team. You need really good wholesalers on your team that are doing good out there in your neighborhoods that can source deals for you, right? Maybe one day you'll need an assistant, and that's an amazing thing to get. And so needing other people and having the humility to understand that you need other people is an incredible adventure, because in real estate, you can leverage your time, right? So that's what you do at your job. If you're at your job, you're in business, okay? Your employer is your customer. And if you're at your job and you also have some real estate, you're in two different businesses, and that's fine. You have other customers, but that's no different, right? And you can leverage your time. You can also leverage your capital, right? And that's a higher form of leverage, because if you leverage your capital to invest in real estate, then you can grow wealth a lot faster than trading your time for money, right? So that's why you're doing that. But then right next to capital is you can leverage other people. And it's a great idea to learn how to both leverage capital and leverage other people. So I would just say that as a framework, because that sort of mind shift where I'm not thinking about this as a side hustle or a hobby or an accident, but this is an actual business. As it starts to get legs, this is how your business can be and actually give you the time that you desire. So once you're able to leverage capital, leverage the talent of other people, that's what sets up the system so that you can put a wedge between you and those businesses.
My back to you is that you started thinking along these lines shortly after the accidental triplex experience, and as you started building out this business. And I think the other theme I heard there is that you maintain the same values as you progress through these different seasons. And through these different seasons, those values embodied, they look different. At one point, you were buying from another wholesaler, then you built your own operation and you did wholesaling, high volume. And then you also very intentionally made a decision to scale that down, all in the service of these core values of your business, all while you mentioned you have a COO, you have someone who's a key integral part of your team that has skills that you don't feel that are your strong skills. And you've learned to not only acknowledge that, but then you two leverage each other for what you guys need. There's just so much good stuff in there about how to not only run a business, but how to think of what you're doing as a business. And I would say that we use the word side hustle, and it's true. I have a W-2 job. So technically, the work I'm doing in real estate is a side hustle, if you want to call it that. But that doesn't change the way I think about it. I think of it like a business. I think of the roles that I need to occupy. I think of it, like you said, as an org chart where I have my CPA, who's a trusted member and a partner on my team. I have lawyers in the different markets I operate in who I have built enough of a relationship with to be able to call if I need them, because I understand the importance we have to each other in the moments that we need those resources. And so I think, yeah, there is an important mindset shift that must happen if you don't want to become one of those tired landlords that owns a house for 10 years and then just gets fed up and quits. If you build it and you embody that mentality from the beginning, chances are you will have the right people around you and the right systems to endure beyond that initial growing pain period. So I loved it. Thank you so much for breaking down that concept. We covered a lot of ground, Justin. I could probably talk to you for another several hours and still not even really crack the surface of all the stuff you've been able to accomplish. I have had it's been such a pleasure to get to know you over these last few months, and I can't wait to have you back. But you want to leave any parting words, or also just share with people where they can find you?
Well, you can find me on social media. If you're friends with Aaron, you can be friends with me. And no, I'm just really glad to be here and thankful for the opportunity to be able to talk with you, Aaron. You've got such a great, wonderful thing going on and such a servant's heart to try and help people build wealth. And I think it's super wise. The folks that you're helping, that I'm interested in helping as well, build methodically, one house at a time. It doesn't have to happen overnight. We don't have to run this race really fast. In fact, that could be a liability. And so for those that are in the grind, I would leave with this question. This is one that my mentor asked me recently that I've been wrestling with. So I'll just offer it up because I've been turning it over in my mind, if that's okay, is what would building a portfolio of rental properties look like if it was easy. And you might have to think outside the box a little bit, but I think that's smart. I think in our market, we have to be thinking outside the box. It's difficult with interest rates with where they are. And there's easier ways to do this if you approach it from different angles. Leveraging other sources of capital is one. We'll offer that up. Potentially leveraging talents of other people and having help from other people is another.
That is a great question to end on. If you want to answer it, shoot me an email with your answer. I'll forward it along to Justin. We'll start some conversations. I'll drop a link on all the places you can find Justin. But thank you again so much for coming on. Can't wait to have you back.
Awesome. Thanks, man.